Hi, this is 365 and this is either my buddy read or my 30 and 30 part 3. I might just combine the two, so this is that video. It'll say what it is in the description. For the buddy read in September, we were supposed to do challengers, and I picked it up and I started it, but I just couldn't get into it, and there was lots of other things going on. And September wasn't the best month for me anyway, so it turned out Katie was the same. So neither of us did very well, which is amazing because behind is Sweet Blood, 10 volumes, and we did that. We actually did really well. So yeah, challengers is what I'm going to be doing over the next few days anyway. So I'm going to move on and actually try and get this challengers done. I don't know what it is. It just feels like I feel like, oh, I'm going to have to push myself through it. I don't know why. Maybe because I tried before and I wasn't getting it. Anyway, I've got a Nomo to help me. And also I made some chai tea. It's not like, it just looks like normal tea, but it's not. It's chai. Vegan chai at that. And some vitamin water. Because, I don't know if you can tell, but my nose is a bit blocked still. Yesterday I had a moment, and I don't know why, but I ended up having a nosebleed. A random one. I was just sitting, probably with my head down, looking at my phone too long. And then all of a sudden there was like blood everywhere. So yeah, I don't know, I have to look after myself. So I'm taking vitamin water and seeing if that helps. It might be probably to do with the fact that I've got the heating on now. It was super, super cold today, and it finally, got down to minus. So it's all icy and stuff and frosty in the mornings and cold. My house is freezing, so I need to put the heating on now. So yeah. Procrastinating. I'm going to put some fire ambiance on and see if I can at least make a start. Come on, I can do it. This is, of course, Tomoe's story. Not obviously his brother, but it's all about Tomoe and Kurokawa. So yeah, we'll see what it's like. I've only ever really seen him animated, and I know of him through Tyrant. So yeah, this was the original. Let's see if it's any good. It's a really old Hinako Takanaga one, so let's give it a go. So I've only really just started, and I'm laughing at the fact that they've called Tomoe Yum Yum. I'm not the one making hungry eyes at the Yum Yum. He's like, even though the Yum Yum is a man. He looks very different. Tomoe in this looks very different to how he looks on the front cover. I just took the front cover off. And how we know him to look from Tyrant. So this cover art is obviously a lot later edition because he looks completely different. I just wanted to say I took the thing off, and I didn't know that they'd put this on the book, which is kind of cool. Anyway, just kind of started. So it didn't take me long. I'm literally just a couple pages later, coming across a particular word, the R word, which I know for some Americans doesn't mean much. And it's not the S word, which I have a vehement opposition to seeing because it's said more, and even Beyonce was like, okay, we'll change that then. But the R word is used here, and I'm covering it with my finger, so I don't need to show you. But yes, we are not very far in, and this particular work has, unfortunately, included that. Up until this point, in terms of how Kurokawa is dealing with his sexuality and how his friend Isogai has been giving him advice, it seems very
sort of modern. Isegai says to him, when it comes to what to do about how he's feeling, Isegai says, why don't you just give up, give in, and come out? Because he seems to have recognized in his friend that he's only had relationships with women, but never had a head over heels, absolutely in love kind of feeling, whereas what he feels for Tomoe seems to be much more akin to that. And so he says, maybe it's because he's more on your level in a sense, and they put a little symbol. So interesting that Isegai seems to have more of a sense of who his friend is, which is interesting. Anyway, yeah, it's a shame. I will keep on the lookout for more content warnings, shall we say. Yeah, so this page has words as well, derogatory terms, and yeah, I'm starting to not feel it. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's very dated in that respect. I'll keep reading to see if I enjoy it anymore. So I'm in the kitchen and I'm about halfway through the first volume, but I need a wee sweet treat pick me up, so I'm gonna make some cinnamon danishes. So I pulled these out of the oven about 30 minutes or so ago, so I'm just gonna put some icing on them and have them with a wee cup of tea. Okay, oh god. So I've got my little cinnamon, I've got a cup of tea, and I'm struggling guys. I don't want to. It's getting to me. Look at this kind of language. I mean, he just uses it all the time and he uses it in a derogatory way. But this is the worst one. He's saying that his relationship with him is fruitless, and he's like, don't call it fruitless. But it is, isn't it? And then you can't really see, but this is the bit where, like, right in there, he calls him, I don't know if it'll focus, he says, you're the fruit in a fruitless relationship, and then he goes on and makes another joke. Or should I say a fruit? He's calling him a fruit? Oh my god, who? Like, I knew this was old. I knew it would be maybe problematic, and it fucking is. It fucking is. You know Soichi? It is Soichi, isn't it? His brother? Like, every time he's, like, bombastically getting angry and wanting to go at Kurokawa, he has reason to do that. He is justified in his emotional response. He's maybe not justified in the volume or emotional concentration of his response, but he is valid in his worries and concerns for his younger sibling, who he is kind of a guardian and sort of parental figure to. He has perfectly legitimate feelings towards Kurokawa, because Kurokawa has nefarious wants and needs, and it's not good. It's not good. He's even attacked him. He's already attacked him. Already. And Tomoe being Tomoe has just been like, what? That's nothing, right? Okay. Like, then even more so, he needs to look out for his brother. 100%. I'm with the Nissan on this. Which is funny because, you know, he's an iconic character. He's iconic from, you know, what we all know and love or don't love about Tyrant. And there was lots of things about Tyrant that I didn't like. And mostly I felt like he was justified in all of his responses. And then there's just language. And I've already said there's been a couple of instances when there's been more. It's been like they've used the S word, they've used the R word, they used the homo term, and now he's calling him a fruit. I mean, for fuck's sakes, this is just... ugh. The other thing is, it's actually pretty difficult to read. I don't know if it's the font, but I actually think it's Hinako Takanaga's early works. They don't flow. They're kind of stilted. The way that the panels move, the way that There's like little asides everywhere. I know that's her style, but it's so busy. There's no white space. There's no time to breathe. There's no... it's just cliche after cliche after cliche so far. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not enjoying it. I know I should be, but I'm not. I'm not. Maybe it's just not the right time for me to be reading this, but then I don't know if there ever will be. So I just need to push through and get it done. And I'm going to have a break after the first volume, and I might just take a break and read that Toko Kawaii one. Just to give myself a little bit of a breather, because, oof, I'm struggling. I am struggling with this. So I'm going to try and finish this. I'm going to have my cup of tea and my cinnamon roll and try and think of maybe what to do. I need a good day out, so I'm going to go out tomorrow. I was going to go out today, but I remembered that the schools are on strike just now. Good. Teachers need to be paid a good fair wage, so I'm supporting the strike action. I'm supporting every strike action. But it did mean that all the places would be busy with lots of people and kids and stuff. So I was like, nah, I'll just stay home. I'll go tomorrow. But it means that today I was like, oh, damn. So I had plans and I didn't do them. And now I'm like, ugh. Yeah. I just don't want to, guys. I just don't want to. Is this going to take over as the worst thing I've read this year? I mean, there's low bars and then there's lower bars. This might be it. Anyway, I'll check in with you later. I wasn't going to update again, but this is just getting worse. I have no words. So in the background, it has flaming and proud of it, because this particular character, who is supposed to be an American foreigner, obviously, is gay and proud of being gay, and so they've chosen to use flaming and proud of it in the background. Also, the way that he speaks is horrendous. I'm hating it. He's supposed to be not great at Japanese, and so all of his L's are R's, which is kind of... I feel like it's kind of racist. I kind of feel like it's racist because they're making him sound like a Japanese person who's trying to speak English, who doesn't have good pronunciation with the L's and the R sounds. And so they're giving it to the foreigner in English. Oh, it's awful. It's awful. I mean, I know some foreign people are not the best at pronouncing Japanese words, but this is horrendous. Like, was this in the original Japanese? Did they do this? I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because isn't it really funny when foreign people can't pronounce words correctly? There are some foreigners who don't have the best grasp of Japanese, but it really seriously does not take you long to get pronunciation down easy peasy. Like, it is super, super easy to be able to say certain things. Oh no. I mean, if you spend any amount of time, it's just the worst. It's the worst. This is the worst. The worst. The worst. I'm hating this. I do not recommend this at all. 100%. No recommendations. I'm hating this. Right, okay. Enough. I will continue and finish this volume. I will. I promise. Oh my god. Yeah, they used the word tranny. Oh my god. Okay, thank fuck I made it to the end of this volume. Jesus Christ. Oh my god, it's awful. But what wasn't awful is reading the mangaka's note at the end, which I always find interesting. I always find it entertaining to read, and I usually feel less angry at a work after reading the notes. You know, maybe a mangaka had an illness or had like several different editors, you know, like if I'm reading something that's like, this is completely disjointed, it makes no sense, then it's like, oh, we had loads of editors, and it was like, oh, the art style completely changed from the beginning to the end, and it was like they had a major illness in the middle. So it can be quite a good thing to read these and find out and be a bit more forgiving. I can't say that particularly forgiving about this, but it was really interesting to hear. So here's the drawing of Kurokawa and Isokai, and that's what they look like in the old version. But compare that to the very first chapter. I mean, this is what they look like in the very first chapter, which is very different. I mean, if we even look, Isokai's there as well, so you know, this is what they looked like at the very start of the book. Then we look at the very end of the book. You can see that her style has developed a bit. And then this is what her so-called current style was. And by current, I mean 2004. So she explains that Challengers was published in a magazine that unfortunately disappeared from the shelves, and so it was completely neglected and it didn't complete, so it was unfinished. And then Kaiosha wanted to reprint it and let her finish it, so they wanted to release all 4 volumes. The first 3 volumes will just be new compilations, but the final 4th volume is a never before seen story. So that's something to look forward to if I manage to make it there. But then she says that, you know, oh, if you got a funny feeling from reading the first chapter and then you made it to the end and there's been some changes, it's because that was done 8 years ago. So the very first chapter she did 8 years before this point in time, 2004. So it's 1996. So this story is a 1996 story, or at least this first chapter. And she goes on to say that it was her debut work. And if it was me, I wouldn't let someone debut with this kind of amateur garbage. So, you know, it's like, it's lightening the tone, because she is saying, you know, how awful it is and how her style's completely changed. And also, she goes on to say how everyone loves Soichi, and that they all wanted to find out what happened to the big brother. And so it was just about to start. So that means back in 2003, 2004... is when Tyrant started, which I have to say is probably peak Assault to Love time in, I would say, between 2003 and 2002 and 2005 in Japan is peak. Let's assault someone and it becomes love as the starting point. I wonder when Finder started, and I wonder when Don't Be Cruel started, because Tyrant, Finder and Don't Be Cruel all have very similar sort of starting points, where they have 2 people who have an assault at the start, sexual assault at the start, and then it ends up becoming a long-running series. And then the mangaka has to address that at some point in whatever way they choose to address that, because, you know, a decade and a half later, it's like, damn, this is a really shitty way to start a story. And unfortunately, it was popular enough that it continued on. But yeah, so we know how Soichi's story goes. But it means that she was only starting it in 2004. So yeah, we have this information here. 2004, Challengers, Kaiosha. And then English translation, Drama Queen, 2006. So this is one of the earliest ones I have in my collection, March 2006. And they do have a note on Rick's Japanglish. This was a choice. The choice they made, it was a choice. A choice I hate. I hate because it's making them sound like it's making Rick sound like the stereotype of an Asian person speaking English. And I hate that for any character. I hate it. And as an English teacher, I hate it. So I'm hating this. I feel like I should do a reel. The oh my god reel. But I don't really want to put out into the world all of the horrendous translations. Because I literally went through this going, oh my god, 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 oh my god. This is horrendous. I don't want to. I'm going to send Katie a message and let her know just how much I am hating this. I didn't think I was going to as well. I hate it. I need to get more hot water in my tea. But yeah, I'm going to message Katie and let her know. I will continue, but not happily.
Good morning. It's the next day and I've made a wee sort of different kind of porridge. I usually make it very plain, very Scottish, with like just a pinch of salt and nothing but water and oats. But today I added some brown sugar and some cinnamon and mixed spice and some coconut oil to see if it could get some coconut flavour. And I've added some apples and a wee drizzle of some maple syrup as well. So it's kind of autumnal. I'm looking at the autumnalness of it. Looking forward to this. It's going to be good. I also started Challengers Volume 2 yesterday, but I didn't get very far into it. I was getting distracted by other things. So I'm just a little bit in. It still feels very old-fashioned, the art style. So I'm going to see if I can get... See? Oh my god. Once again, I'd read these first two panels. I hadn't got down to this panel yet. And I'm just going to cover that word up because it's offensive. It is offensive. I am offended. Why? Why? So, yeah, I'm going to see. I was going to say, see how far I can get into it and if I enjoy it. And, yeah, well, I don't think I'm going to. And it just feels a little bit much, you know? Anyway. This is where I'm at. I'll update you. Probably at the end, because if I have to update you all the way through, I'm going to be annoyed. So it's actually dinner time, so I've been busy during today, but not actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm about halfway through now. His mum has come back. We've got a bit more issues. It's quite interesting. I think Tomoe might actually be asexual in some way. There's like shades of that for sure, which is a good thing because it's like, oh, that's interesting, but it's also kind of a bad thing because it seems like there's a lack of respect there for someone who's like, just like maybe working through their own sexuality. And I think, you know, let him take his time. And the language and the homophobic language in here is horrendous. I hate it. And I hate some of the characters and I hate how tropey it is. And then you're like, well, how tropey is it? Is this like the first time this was in a BL manga and now it's tropey, or was this still like tropey even at its time? So I can't say I'm enjoying it, but I am gonna look forward to my like chicken tikka tacos. They're not really tacos, but they are kind of like tacos. Anyway, that's what my dinner's gonna be. I will try and get this done. It's a struggle, guys. It's a struggle. So it's the next day. I have finished volume 2. Yay! It's a struggle, guys. It's a struggle. So yeah, we had his mum coming back and then her drama. Then we had the other foreigner, Phil, coming and his drama, and then we had a little bit more of, I suppose, development, with Tomoe feeling like he might have developing feelings. I still think he is asexual. He has that sort of coding, because at no point does he feel like he comes across as having any physical sexual desire. Like, the idea of them kissing was more like an experiment to see how he felt. And I think, you know, that's quite indicative of someone who's asexual, because it's more like, well, I'll see, I'll try, and we'll just do like a social experiment there. Rather than having any true, real, you know, overwhelming desire for any kind of physical contact. It's more like well, I guess we could try and see. I guess. And then this section at the end, which is quite a big chunk. Well, it's not the whole thing. It's to about here. This is basically like the first chapter of When Tyrant Falls in Love. That manga. That's like the spin-off, the much more popular, longer running spin-off. This is kind of like the first chapter where we get introduced to Morinaga and what happened with Shuichi, and well, the Nissan, his brother, and why he is the way he is, and the fact that he was very badly sexually assaulted. And that's why he has this general tendency to have such homophobic views. And in that respect, there is a sort of, when I just saw it, like a little image, and it was a Morgan Freeman quote saying that he doesn't like the word homophobia because it's not a phobia. You're not afraid. You're just an asshole. But I think if you have been sexually assaulted, then there is some degree of fear and phobia there. There's also like your conscious mind of saying, no, there's no issues. But then there's like the subconscious of you saying, yeah, but there's always a possibility. You know, that fear, that trauma, that does come about. When it's unfounded and there's no underlying trauma there, then I don't think phobia is the right word necessarily. Yeah. Asshole. So yeah, he is homophobic and he is an asshole, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he went through something that was quite traumatic. So yeah, Morinaga's aware of that. And then there was this big chunk of stuff that she had talked about before. This is something that was really interesting, so I wanted to bring this up because it happened a couple of times when she was talking about, I wonder if I can find it, the very first thing she was talking about, the different characters. And it might have been within the manga, or it might have been here with, when she was talking about Isegai, and how no matter what, Isegai's like the pinup boy, he's also, if he was involved, because when she talks about possible scenarios that were cancelled, and if Isegai was the one who had been like, what? Kurokawa? You're gay? I've always loved you! And so there's a love triangle type situation. Then Kurokawa would just give in and be like, okay, and everyone would just accept it, and everyone would be happy, except for Kurokawa would be like, what? And so that could have been the way that the story went. And she did mention things, and I don't remember what else, but then in every permutation, if Isegai was involved, he would be the one that would come out on top, because everyone likes him so much. Anyway, I can't find it, but there was this whole thing about, there was a mention previously of alphas and betas, and I was like, oh, this must be the translation of Seme and Uke, or Tachi and Neko. I'm assuming it's Seme and Uke, but who knows, it could have been Tachi Neko. Tachi Neko is the more appropriate term at this point if you were to understand gay culture. But if you're just looking at it from a BL Yaoi perspective, then Seme and Uke are the terms that would be used. So I don't have the Japanese, so I don't know what the original is, but I'm assuming it would be Seme and Uke.
and that this translator, and I have to just give them props, Libby Maxim, this is translated 2006, that if they've used these terms, alpha and beta, to translate, obviously nowadays it might be translated as alpha and omega, but because the Omegaverse has become such a big thing, we could still have it translated as alpha and beta. But I just love this. This is a really interesting question, so I'm really interested to hear what other people might say. Is this like a proto-Omegaverse usage, or has there been other usages of the terms alpha, beta, or omega in Yaoi BL translations? I mean, this is one of the earliest translated Yaoi BL works, and what they've chosen to translate, I'm assuming, is the Seme-uke terms as alpha and beta, because they haven't put the Japanese in there. Because at that point in time, a Western audience of an English language translation would not have chosen to use the word Seme and Uke. Although nowadays you might want to, because there's an understanding that those who have read these stories have that knowledge. Anyway, I just find this really interesting, because when I was thinking about it, if we just ignore the fact that this manga itself is probably from the mid to late 90s, and so yes, the Japanese terms are the Japanese terms. If we just look at it from the translation perspective, from the Western perspective, when was this translated and published? So it was published in July 2006. So it must have been translated between 2004 and 2006, or they maybe looked at earlier versions of it. But I was looking at when, fanfiction.net and, AO3 and all that kind of started, and when is the first usage of Omegaverse terminology and Omegaverse, the factors that make up that trope. And so it's quite interesting to see. Obviously, everyone likes to think of Omegaverse as being something from supernatural fanfiction, but that there are like proto versions of Omegaverse in fanfiction, with the mpreg and heat cycles and things like that from like the 1950s, and Star Trek fictions and things like that. So it's really interesting to look at Omegaverse, and I was like, the history of Omegaverse, like that is an academic tome I would buy the shit out of. I'm like, has someone written all of these academic papers, please? Can I read them? And I think I have a few, so I would really like to do that. But I just think this is probably one of the first instances of proto Omegaverse translated into BL Yaoi. And so this is kind of like in sentient stages of Omegaverse. And I just think that's kind of cool. The whole manga is shit. But that aspect is kind of cool. That someone has chosen, specifically Libby Maxim, has chosen to translate what I'm assuming is Seme and Uke as alpha and beta. And why did the Libby Maxim make these choices in translation, specifically these words? What was the understanding? What was the background? What made Libby Maxim think this was the good way to use these terms? And did it really need to be said? Could they have used something else, like pitcher and catcher, all those other kinds of terminologies, bottom and top, like what was available at that time, and why did she choose alpha and beta instead? This is just so fascinating to me. The translation history, the evolution, how it all matches up. This is the kind of thing that I find really fascinating and kind of just tickles me pink. But yeah, and I also like the idea of him being a top. I mean, that's definitely the way to go, because Kurakawa's not really the most toppy of tops. He's kind of a wet rag as a main character. I don't particularly find him in any way endearing. So yeah, this is the whole translation notes at the end. There's quite a lot of them. So I don't know why they didn't put it in, but there you go. But yeah, so I finally finished volume 2 and I'm very happy about it. It still is rife with homophobic language, homophobia, negative tropes, boring tropes, overused tropes, the kind of language that you just like, oh my god, this is so ridiculous. It's very of its time. It's overly sexual compared to the OVA, which is interesting, especially this chapter. So here, there's a section where it's translated as, oh, those hips, you know, but he just basically says his ass and his cock. Like, Jesus Christ, that's not what I was expecting. But yeah, there's a lot of language. Like literally every I would say every 10 pages there is. I mean, I don't really want to show it, but when the Morinaga chapter came, he was going on about how he really hates gay people and they're perverts, and this is how they say that Morinaga, instead of just saying he, Morinaga, is gay, she translates it as fairy for real. Like, fair isn't really even a word, so I'm wondering why. There is a lot of translation choices in this book, which is just fascinating. It's so bad, and so it's not even of its time, it's of a certain social situation and time. It's of someone who's fine with using the R word to describe someone as not being terribly intelligent. And that was never really something within my vocabulary at the time that this was being published. I am 100% can say that as someone who's Scottish, in our society, that would be absolutely unacceptable. The S word, the R word, when it comes to using language to describe someone. And all of the homophobic slurs, it's just disgusting. It's awful. And that's not something that is inherent within everyone's culture at the time that this was being translated. So, yeah. Anyway, I've been blabbering on. My breakfast is getting cold. But I did think that the alpha beta thing at the end was really fascinating. So if anyone has any academic papers about Omegaverse and how it kind of came about, that would be really interesting. So let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to have something to eat, and then we will try and get to volume 3. I might try and read something else just as a palate cleanser before I get in to volume 3, because this is tough, guys. This is a slog. So we've got some reading sprints just now from Isabel's alright, and I've got my dinner here as well, which I made some like potato skins, loaded potato skins with some salad. And I got volume 3 of the most annoying manga ever written. I know, I don't really want to, but it is reading sprints, and I thought I would read and eat and try and see if I can get some done while I'm here. It is lovely. There is some nice old style artwork, which is cute to look at, but anyway, we shall see if there's any progress, and less annoying language maybe. I'll let you know how I'm getting on with these sprints as well. So we're on to the next sprint, and I'm a little bit further along, but there was a point here in the story that made me think even more so that Tomoe is being coded as asexual, because he just doesn't have any real kind of driving desire to have sex. And yet everyone around him is saying really negative stuff. If you really love someone, you want to make love to them. I suppose that's usually the case, but that's not the case for everyone, and he's kind of me, for instance. So he's specifically saying, yes, I have feelings for him, but I don't necessarily want to have sex. I mean, you couldn't get any clearer than that when it comes to asexuality. And then he just turns around and says, those people are weird and I don't like them. And it's like, oh my god, I hate it here. I hate it here. Poor Tomoe. He's being, you know, sort of put down, and he's looking for answers about himself and he's not getting them. Whereas at least Phil is kind of ignoring Rick and saying, okay, let's have a wee chat about it. And he understands that one of the biggest issues was they tried to have sex and it hurt because neither of them know how to have gay sex. And you know what? From reading on, I don't think Hinako Takanaga knows how to have gay sex. It's awful. They're talking about Vaseline and lotion and stuff like this. And I'm like, oh my god, do not use Vaseline with latex condoms because it eats the latex. It will eat the condom. It will make the condom break. Don't use Vaseline, guys. This is not a good book to read. If you're wondering, please do not take this as anything like gospel. Jesus Christ. It's awful. It's so bad. So yeah, there's a problem where they're at the stage where Tomoe is kind of going, maybe I don't have feelings for or desire for sex. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, Tomoe. He sounds fine to me. It's everyone else that is going crazy. Maybe that's what this whole series is. Maybe this whole series is a kind of asexual allegory. Because every single character seems like they might have some sort of issue mentally. They're kind of acting in very outlandish and, dare I say, crazy ways because it doesn't really fit with logic. And Tomoe, who is obviously, from my perspective, he's asexual, and he seems like the only person who seems normal, and his way of thinking, maybe it's just me reading too much into this, but yeah, I hate it here. This is so awful. Anyway, I'm going to keep on reading. Hopefully, I mean, it's going to be shit. It's awful. But at least we're doing some reading sprints and I'm getting some done. So I've got 35 minutes to try and see how far I can get in this. So I just got to the end of this chapter where they've finally had some communication, which seems to be lacking in most of the stories. But the way that that Tomoe just kind of found, oh, this is the problem. These are the people I need to talk to try and figure out this problem. And, oh, this is the stuff that I need to solve this problem, and I need to then talk to the person to solve this problem. And Tomoe just did all of that. So I'm like, okay. And Kurokawa uses this phrase, maybe he's a late bloomer, or maybe he's the proactive type. Being called a late bloomer is one of the, like, identifiers of being asexual. People call asexual people late bloomers all the time. If you're a girl, then you get sometimes the tomboy title, and if you're a boy, then you get called things like sensitive and stuff because you're not interested in sex. But almost always, you know, man or woman, non-binary, doesn't matter. Late bloomer is something that gets bandied around, and yes, I got that too. So it's interesting, this whole thing of being ignorant about not knowing any better, being direct. But he says he is unflinchingly honest challenger. I don't know what that is supposed to be, but I think that's code for asexual. Is that what this whole series is about? It's about asexuality? Am I reading an asexual text? Is that what this is? Oh my god. Is that what this is all about? It's because he's just asexual? Wow, I feel like the scales have dropped from my eyes. Anyway, I'm going to carry on reading. So we're back on another sprint. I think this is going to be the last one. And this is the conversation that I remember from the OVA that they used. Because pretty much a lot of this so far is also in the OVA. But it's this conversation when Soichi asks, you know, if you want to be with him, I won't stop you, but can't you just have a normal relationship? Is there really only one way for you to be together? As in, do you need to have a sexual, gay romantic relationship? And then Tomoe says, to be honest, I think I'd be okay with any type of relationship. But Kurokawa-san isn't the same as me. Like, 100% he is. Obviously, for me, like, I'm totally reading into it, and I'm just wondering if anyone thinks the same. I wonder if Katie thinks this too. I'm going to send her a message. Because in this particular volume, it has come loud and clear, like it's screaming at me. I mean, I always thought that in the first 2 volumes, but I was like, is it? But yeah, this volume 100% is like really confirming it to me with his words and actions that he's probably asexual, but not necessarily aromantic, and therefore feels capable of having that kind of relationship and, you know, enjoying it. So it's very nuanced. It really does highlight the nuanced aspect of being asexual, which is a positive. I've got to say, this is a positive. And in the way that everyone around him reacts to him is very much the asexual experience. So yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. And I like that about it. I don't like a lot about it, but I like that about it. So yeah, we've got 40 minutes left, and I'm gonna see if I can get this volume finished. I think I probably could be able to. So these sprints have been really, really helpful because I was really ready to just yeet this out of the window. So I thought I would be able to finish, and I have, with 10 minutes still to go on this sprint for volume 3. I've completed it. Yay! Making my way through. There was a lot of the Soichi Morinaga story, and then a lot of it that you kind of get from the OVA. So if you're interested, you can watch that OVA. It's probably on YouTube. Maybe. And then at the end, they had a very silly story with his mum and Isugai. And I mean, Kurokawa is kind of like a wet fish when it comes to as a character, and it was obvious from this volume that she was having more fun with the Morinaga Soichi Tatsumi story, the spin-off that she's planned, and she mentions it down here that it's about to come out. So this is before the first volumes come out, so around 2004. So when did she say the next volumes will be out? About the Big Brother will come out. So yeah, so this must be 2004, and so that's when the first volume must have come out. She has these things at the side for her little talk at the end, and the only reason she has them is because she likes her she had these strips of things anyway, so she just wanted to do 4-panel comedies. And she has all of these gay-themed movies. And I like that. I know Kusabi is there. My Own Private Idaho, things like that. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should watch some of these and review them. Apparently they're all her favourites. But then she goes on to say, to talk about modern things that she's watching that she feels are slashable, like The Lord of the Rings, and she has a bit of a thing for Aragorn being... She's probably quite happy to read some fan fiction about that. But also Gromit from Wallace and Gromit. She thinks the dog is gay, and I'm like, but yes. But yes. And she talks about her cats. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The Morinaga story, the spin-off with the brother, is most definitely much more competently drawn. And look at the complete difference between these panels, how big they are, how they flow better, how they're not crammed full of stuff. And then you look at these kind of panels, and it's just crammed full. But I mean, compared to volume 2, it's just completely chock-a-block full of stuff. And then when they get together, especially the first, so much stuff. So many panels and so much talking. It's definitely a progression of her ability to tell the story through the panels. So yeah, there's definitely been progression in her work, art style and things like that. And she's obviously had a lot more fun telling their story than... look at that one. Compared to some of the first panels, she basically is like just huge big space, and then this bit. This is indicative of what she does. For Morinaga's story, there's this like 3 panels, 1 speech bubble, and then when it comes to their story with Isegai, it's like a comedy, and it's just completely chock-a-block full. It's got all of these extra things in it in the background, little asides, absolutely unnecessary. No, thank you. So yeah, it's very different. But I'm glad that that's over with. But it definitely did make me feel more like Tomoe is asexual, and he's kind of aware of that. But at this point in time, I don't think that's something that was necessarily within the mainstream consciousness. It certainly wasn't within media so much. I certainly don't remember that, people talking about the different kinds of sexuality when this was being written, first of all, and when I was younger. It was very much are you gay? then you're going to burn in hell and get AIDS. That's pretty much it. Or you're normal and straight. That was your 2 options. So I do have 1 more volume, which I could start, or I could just check in with you when I've read a little bit more. Hopefully this will be, who knows, better? Who's to say? But I do now have to start this one. So it's the next day, and I am going to have some lunch and finish reading Challengers Volume 4. I'll let you know what I think when I've finished it. So I have finished Volume 4. I put a little blanket on just to keep me warm. And I've got a wee cat visiting. She's sitting on the... There she is. Saying hi. Hi. Staring at me all the way through what I was reading this. Well, when I was getting it. So this volume is definitely a lot more developed in terms of paneling and things like that. It's just much more competent. It's not crammed full of things in the same way as the earlier volumes. It's quite interesting. We have Kanako suspecting that Soichi is gay in that story. Then we have the introduction of this whole series is like there's definitely points to be brought out and discussed, and in this one I think it's the discussion of the representation of female characters within BL stories, and I think we get all kinds of representation, but the majority of female characters are crazy. You're crazy, girl. Crazy. They're kind of crazy. They're selfish. They're narcissistic. They're conniving. That's generally how the mangaka portray women within BL. And this woman is utterly insane. Very narcissistic. And the way that it's presented in the translation, they make her kind of religious. Like, I'm doing God's work trying to stop this man from being gay. And you know, this is the point. It's her duty. Women are infinitely better for men, blah, blah, blah. She wants to rehabilitate him. So there's that sense of, like, gay conversion. Horrendous. So, yeah, that's a whole storyline. She's very crazy. And then Tomoe gets invited to go to America, and he gets so excited he doesn't even think that he'd have to leave Kurokawa, so Kurokawa has a sort of lack of confidence whilst this lady is being very, very weird. There's still bad homophobic language all the way through, right to the end. But it kind of works itself out, and then it ends. So there's not too much of Soichi and Kurokawa except at the beginning. I don't think I showed you this lovely colour image. It's really nice, and it is on the back as well. And then right at the end is much more of the tomoe that gets presented in the later works, because a lot of this later section was added in so that it could be completed later on. This last section, she just talks and talks and talks. There's like pages and pages of her afterward, which is interesting for me to read, but this is when she kind of completed it in the first time. Was in 1997, so it was like maybe a 2-year job that she did of writing the story, and then she got to come back to it in 2004 so that it could get reprinted in 4 complete volumes, because I don't think it got to the first time round in its publication. So she was very happy about that, and because that was getting reprinted, they then started working on Annie's story, Soichi and Morinaga, and obviously we know that that's something that is still technically ongoing. There was a point in time when she wrapped it up and said this is the final volume, but then the people of Japan just were like, could you just carry on? We're fine with you just carrying on. And I think that might just be the case, like she might just carry on doing more volumes as they get older. But yeah, it's interesting to see how this obviously quite young mangaka debuts with a work and then develops, and at the same time society and their views on things develop. And then you get the English translation, which is a snapshot of time in itself, 2004 through to... when is this getting published? 2007. So this translation is 2006, 2007. That's a snapshot in itself of culture and translations. But then it's 2006, 2007 interpreting a 2004 reprint of a 1996, 1997 manga. So there's layers and layers of change in that time frame. So if we think about what life was like for anyone in the LGBTQIA plus, queer community in the mid 1990s, it's very different from how it is in 2004, and then once again 2007, and now 2022. It's completely different, and it's those massive differences. The fact that I can read this and go, ugh, yuck, is testament to how much we have changed as a society. I remember in the mid-90s they were still going on about, oh, if you're gay, you're gonna get AIDS, and that's it. That's it. They didn't talk about bisexuals. They didn't talk about lesbians. They didn't talk about anything at all. The language was so just disgusting and discriminatory. And so yeah, as much as it's like quite disturbing to read some of the language in here, it's also a testament to how much we as a society have moved on, and how much wider it's unacceptable to use that language. It's a wider thing. Like before it would have been like, oh well, someone's saying something that, whereas now it's like, no, we don't accept this. We do not accept this. So yeah, I'm glad I finished this. I'm gonna have another warm drink, and my hands are a wee bit cold, so I'm gonna get a wee warm drink and probably feed this little cat some ham because she's just been sitting there waiting patiently for some sort of snack or to come in my house. She does come in my house quite a lot. It's like she just wants to be inside, which, to be fair, sure, it's winter and it's cold, so but she doesn't live here, so yeah, let's get some ham for her. So I thought I would just do a wee wrap up. I've got a wee cup of tea here just to keep me all warm because it's starting to get cold. Very nice. So let's do a little wrap up, shall we? To finish this video, which is a video probably within a video, because I started this thinking it was going to be a 1330 vlog and I could combine them, but as soon as I started talking about this, I was like, no, this is going to have to be its own video. Which means the video itself, the vlog, is probably not terribly entertaining or interesting. Even though I went places and I did stuff, that'll probably be in the 1330 vlog. So go and check that if you're interested. I don't know which of these videos will come out first. Probably this one. Yeah, who knows? But yeah, so all the other things I've read for the last 10 days will be in the 1330. So these are the 4, and so 6 other things will probably be in the 1330. I really needed the sprints, so Isabel, thanks. That was well needed to get through this. It's a real struggle. But I have to say that this series is really interesting in the fact that it has so many aspects that are worth discussing, in terms of how old it is and the age it is, the tropes and the sort of evolution of the series, and how the publishing industry works in Japan, and how things can get dropped and then revitalized, and what it means to work as a mangaka and all of that kind of stuff, as well as the development of the art style and the storytelling, as well as the development of the language that's appropriate and not appropriate, as well as the development of social norms and what is and is not acceptable within society. And then you've got the actual story itself, which is fascinating from my perspective, because I'm asexual, and so I cannot read this story without 100% identifying aspects of Tomoe in myself, and his experience of being surrounded by people who, for want of a better word, seem a little bit crazy and over the top and sex obsessed. I spoke to Katie a little bit about this. She's probably going to be finishing this, or maybe she's already finished it by the time I'm doing this wrap up. But she's finding it really hard to read as well, and she's really finding it difficult because from her perspective she sees Kurokawa as grooming Tomoe, and there's definitely aspects of that. I think from the first and second volumes, that's definitely how I felt about it, because Tomoe is so, in my mind, asexual. But from the first volume, you don't necessarily see the asexuality, because you see the grooming story instead. You see this story of an older man who's probably 10 years older than him, because Tomoe is only like 17, 18. And Kurokawa, I don't think I mentioned this in any of the videos, like, he is an adult man. He's working, shakaijin. He's in society. He has a mortgage on a flat, on a property, which he would need to have gone to university, gotten his degree, and then gone into a company, and then worked his way up to a certain level to then save the money and then have enough, you know, of an income to be able to get the mortgage from a bank, which is, by the way, incredibly difficult. It's hard to do in Japan. Like so many of my friends who were around the 30-year-old mark were like, I don't know if we can afford a mortgage. I don't know, because it's so much easier to rent in Japan. Oh my god, it's so much easier to rent in Japan. Even for foreigners, and even with all of their stupid key money, absolute bullshit nonsense and extra fees, it's still probably easier than it is to get a mortgage. Anyway, that's a rant over. So the point is, he's an adult man, and even if he didn't go to university and he started in the company, worked his way up to that stage, he would still be a certain age older than Tomoe, and a lot more experienced, whether that be in life in general or specifically with romantic relationships and sexually. He is someone who is in a position of power over Tomoe in terms of his landlord position. Someone who can either support him or take advantage. And he sexually assaulted him. I mean, I don't know what to say. So 100%, I agree with Katie. There is an element of grooming within this, which I found distasteful in the first volume. But for me, that was like, it's so tropey. Because it is a trope that an older man is like, oh, I kind of fancy this person and I'm going to take advantage. The interesting point is that Kurokawa, up until this point, has in no way displayed any interest in another man, except from Isagai's perspective, which is that he was like, well, there was something about you. Izagai is like peak, I don't know, chaos. He just seems... I don't know. Izagai is a crazy and interesting and weird character, and that's what this whole thing is. It feels like it's kind of like a fever dream. But for Tomoe's perspective, he goes to the big city. He gets lost. He gets thrown up on, and then these salarymen take him to their house, and then one of them ends up fancying him, and so he just ends up living with him. It's a when you think about the story, it's crazy. It's insane. Makes no sense. And at no point did I ever feel, at any point in the 4 volumes, that Tomoe actually feels true affection and love for Kurokawa in the way that BL manga and romance novels and rom-com movies and sometimes in life I see love portrayed. I didn't ever feel the depths of feeling from Tomoe. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just it makes me wonder how much Tomoe, even the whole jealousy thing, he wasn't really that jealous. He wasn't that jealous. So could he, live his life perfectly fine without Kurokawa? Yeah. Would he be happy? Yeah, he'd be happy. Honestly. The asexual coding of Tomoe is so strong in this work, and for that I do applaud it, because for me it's so interesting to see an asexual character anywhere near a BL work, but specifically a BL work in 1996 with a bisexual awakening in 1996. At no point does anyone mention bisexuality or asexuality in this work, but it's there, and so I want to say these are interesting and good things. But are they enough to in any way compensate for the horrendous language and the use of homophobic and ableist slurs? No. Is it in any way compensating for the absolutely horrendous tropes and offensive deeds and words and actions of characters? No. Is it in any way making up for, especially in this first volume, the absolutely terrible manga in terms of paneling and flow and things like that? The lack of comedy when it's supposed to be comedic, the assaults, the not No, it does not make up for it. Am I happy that it exists? Because it's such an interesting thing and it just brings up so many different points. Yes, I'm happy that it exists. Am I happy that I read it? Oof. I hate to say yes. I hate to say yes. I'm happy I read it. I have read it. I do not need to read it again. Did I enjoy reading it? No, I did not. Do I recommend it? No, I do not. This is 100%. I do not recommend you read this. And I know there'll be people who are watching this thinking, oh, but I love Challengers. It's great. And I will say, reread it. Reread it today. Because this is like Books and Lala. Kayla rereading her childhood favourites and being like, oh, this is not good. rereading favourites from 5 years ago and you're like, oh, I gave this 5 stars, and you read it again, you're like, was this 5 stars or is this nostalgia? I have read so many things this year that I was like, oh, I loved this when I was younger, and then going, oof, maybe not so great. And it's about reading with a critical eye and reading with an openness, you know? Open to changing your mind. And not saying you're wrong, because at the time you were right. When you gave something 5 stars, you were right. But does it deserve it in today's reading? Maybe not. And this for me is the case. In 1996, was this an amazing read? Probably. In 2004, was it good? Yes. In 2006 and 2007, was it when this was published in English, and everyone managed to get a copy if they did. Did they enjoy it? Probably. But in 2022, can we accept this as it is? No. But can we look at it from a sort of anthropological perspective, a social critique perspective? Yes, certainly. And for that, I applaud it, and I'm happy that it exists. Because I can look at this and I can have multiple kinds of conversations about the actual text itself, from an archaeological perspective, or from an anthropological perspective, or sociological perspective. You know, this is really interesting in art history and language development. All of these different factors play a part. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. It's probably way longer than it should be, and I have just yammered on again and again all the way throughout this. So I'm sorry this vlog is not as interesting in terms of content, and I hope you have enjoyed my rants and my raves about this work. I would absolutely love to hear your opinions and your takes on this. If you have read this, do you consider Tomoe to be asexual? If you are asexual, have you read this? I'd love to know what your view is on asexual representation in BL. Are there other works that I should be reading? Because this was a surprise for me. And I do think that when he talks about challengers, he's using that as code for the kind of person that Tomoe is, and the kind of person that Tomoe is asexual. So challengers is actually asexual. That's what this whole thing is. Which I love. If not, I would like to know other people's theories. That would be really good to hear. So yeah, give me a comment down below, a like, subscribe, all of those things. It helps out the channel. I also have a Patreon. I never plug it because there's not very much there. I basically just do early access and sometimes some Patreon exclusive vlogs and stuff go up there. So yeah, if you fancy it. I only have one tier. It's just the $1 tier. Just that's it. There's not very many people. You get a shout out at the end of the videos, so you'll be able to see who my Patreons are. But yeah, I hope everyone is taking care of themselves and getting ready for the end of the year. Are you ready for 2022 to be over? I kind of am. But I'm really glad I've been taking part in all of these buddy reads with Katie. She's been very supportive in trying to get me through some of my older works, and that has been necessary for this one. So thanks, Katie, for helping me with this, and the 1330 crew for making me read this as well. I'm 365801 and I make videos about BL manga, yaoi, male romance, and all that good stuff. Take care, everyone. I will see you in the next video. Bye.